As we've been discussing testing, I've put it in the context of a process, the testing process. And as we talk about the testing process, it's been from the developer's perspective. It's what you do when you develop and how you bring testing into the process of development. Now, by having tests, there's a whole other set of processes that become available to us. Notably, I want to talk about continuous integration and continuous delivery. Now, today we talk about them as if they're sort of the same thing. Originally, I believe continuous integration was for much larger systems where you would take the various units and slowly integrate them. And continuous delivery has always been the idea where you are going to start with your code. You're going to test it, make sure that it works, and bundle it however it needs to be bundled, and then immediately deliver it. Now, I've seen in some cases where, depending on how far you want to go, you fall just a little bit short of delivery, and you say, well, we're not going to put it in production, we are going to put it in staging, and then we have QA run through it. Regardless of how you decide to follow these processes, depending on your application and what your sort of test coverage looks like, you now are in a position with all of these tests to begin to leverage some of these tools. As we have already deployed on Heroku, I first want to point you at the Heroku CI. Now, we're not going to see how to set up on the Heroku CI because using the Heroku CI requires us to configure Heroku pipelines and also requires us to connect our GitHub repository to Heroku for the continuous deployments. It's a little bit outside the scope of this class because this is a Django class, not a Heroku class. Now, if you are on any other system, you have a number of other options. However, I have lately heard very good things about Microsoft's Azure Pipelines. Now, Azure Pipelines, as I understand it, is more of a combination of the CI and pipelines. So it is not limited to what Heroku considers a pipeline. And I would take some time to really dive into their documentation. Now, some of their documentation can be a little bit overwhelming. And I find that Hinnock has a lovely article about how to get started specifically with Azure Pipelines with Python. And so this article would be directly applicable to our Django setup. So now that you have the tests, now that you understand the processes, you can begin to move in to using it in other contexts, allowing you to more safely and more regularly deploy your application and begin to move into a DevOps world.